Happy Halloween. Trump, fearing growing protests, secretly renovates old bunker under new ballroom. A report by the State Department indicates the Israeli military broke hundreds of human rights laws in Gaza. Plans for smart city targets Jamaica with weather-modifying tech. The U.S. border chief is chased from a federal courthouse by angry protesters in Chicago. A new Russian missile can reach the United States. Do we have what it takes to stop it? Protesters fly Trump-wearing diaper blimp in Washington at the National Monument. The Trump team creates AI-generated video to fuel No Kings protests. All that and more coming up next. It's Friday, October 31st, 2025. Thank you for joining me for alternative news covering some of the top stories of the week as well as today, largely ignored by the mainstream media. And but before we get started, here's a quick 30-second commercial from my sponsor, Dubby. Dubby Clean Energy Drink Mix. Lots of different flavors, including a hydration blend with electrolytes. Whether you're working an overnight shift or driving long distance, no matter what the situation is, Dubby will keep you alert and awake. Dubby energy drinks are made in the USA, FDA approved, and contain no sugar, no maltodextrin, no artificial colors or dyes, and is gluten-free. Visit the website for more flavors and products. Order Dubby Energy Drink Mix online by using the video or description link and enter code UFO1 for 10% off.
Total demolition within days. That's what two administration officials tell NBC News is now the fate of the historic East Wing of the White House to make way for President Trump's massive new ballroom.
It'll be one of the great ballrooms anywhere in the world. It's about $300 million.
That ballooning price tag up from $200 million, with the president saying he's covering the cost, along with private donors, among them Comcast, NBC's parent company. The East Wing teardown coming despite this earlier promise.
It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it.
Now, as the debris pile is growing, so is the backlash.
I just can't believe that the wrecking ball is taken to this iconic structure that symbolizes America and our strength and culture.
The president noting the East Wing, home base to first ladies for decades, has seen changes over the years.
It was never thought of as being much. It was a very small building.
Now, the National Trust for Historic Preservation warning administration officials the planned 90,000 square foot ballroom will overwhelm the White House itself at 55,000 square feet as Americans watch history under renovation.
Now, this ballroom is just the cover for their goal to build a new Presidential Emergency Operations Center, or PEOC, which is a bunker under the East Wing. So they already have a bunker there. It's an old one. It's not very good, and Trump wants to build a new one. When they were working on the existing bunker back in 1950, they tried to keep that secret from the public as well. They put fences up around it when they were working on it and stuff like that. So Trump basically is his goal. This is to build this new bunker, which is part of the Ballroom project. They're just not talking about it, so that he has a more comfortable place to hide when he runs from the people after the SNAP benefits get cut off, which is what he's worried about. And they may have made a last-second deal. This information's just coming through. We'll talk about that towards the end of the program. But next, Israel violates the ceasefire and continues with its genocide, unfortunately.
Israel's continuing strikes on Khan Yunis in southern Gaza and neighborhoods of northern Gaza City, even as Israeli officials claim they're abiding by the U.S.-brokered ceasefire. The attacks came as Israel confirmed Hamas had returned the bodies of 2 Israeli hostages, while the Nasser medical complex in Gaza reported Israel had returned the bodies of 30 Palestinian prisoners, some exhibiting signs of torture. Al Jazeera is reporting a Palestinian has been killed by Israeli gunfire in Gaza City. Meanwhile, the Washington Post is reporting a classified report from the State Department's Office of Inspector General found Israeli military units committed hundreds of possible violations of U.S. human rights law in Gaza that would take years to investigate. It's the first time a U.S. government report has reviewed the scope of Israeli actions in Gaza under the Leahy laws, legislation that bars U.S. military assistance to foreign military personnel accused of human rights abuses.
So Israel broke hundreds of human rights laws according to this classified report by the State Department. That's what Amy Goodman was talking about there.
So I don't know why they downgraded it to a tropical storm. It impacted Alaska, and this is a picture of the village of Kipnuk, which the ocean basically came in and completely inundated the entire town and washed away several homes, actually. So this is an image of Kipnuk before, and then this is an image of Kipnuk after. And you can see at least, they say 8 to 12 homes were washed away, but when I looked at the satellite images, it looks like there could be a lot more than that, actually. So in Kipnuk, their airport was also flooded, and they don't have any highways that actually reach to this part of the coast from the mainland. So their only way to get goods or even people in and out is either by sea or air, and the airport was actually down. So the only thing they could use was helicopters to actually get people in and out. This is the town of Kipnuk, completely inundated, and people were on their roofs and being rescued by helicopter. And now that they've been evacuated, it could be over a year before they're allowed to return to their homes. Okay, so now I actually do have some footage that I want to show. This is the satellite footage of Typhoon Halong. And you can see up there at the top, there was like this injected convection going on. And we've seen this with Milton and Hurricane Helene, where they inject these blobs out in front of the hurricane. And the hurricane usually does end up traveling in that direction. Now, in the past, we have found bunker ships in these locations just sitting idle, putting up these large plumes of convection that actually feed the hurricane. But I can only usually catch that on the Marine Tracker if I'm looking in real time. Because Marine Tracker hides all their satellite data and everything behind a paywall. And here is where it's like Category 4 and it's brushing up against Japan. And it did cause record rains and a lot of damage to infrastructure in Japan. However, there was only 1 death. So yeah, like I said, I was unable to find any marine traffic data on this storm after the fact, but it does look similar to other what I call surface aerosol injections via bunker ships that we have seen and proven in the past.
Yeah, and of course you saw Shane Buell there talking about aerosol chemicals being sprayed into these storms. He says injected, but that's just his term for sprayed into these storms from these bunker ships. And he also goes on to explain that they're autonomous. These bunker ships, meaning that nobody's monitoring them. No one's monitoring where they're coming, where they're going from. There's no logs or anything, records like there normally should be for ships like this. And there's going to be links in the description for all of this stuff that I'm referencing today, so you can watch Shane and Tracy Derwin there in that program in its entirety, if you'd like to, on their channel, The Brush Junkie. Again, just check the description and I'll have links for all of that. Now, the reason they targeted this area of Alaska is because of its gold mine resources. Next, Shane Buell will talk about evidence he discovered regarding bunker ships spraying chemicals into storms to feed them feed them and basically intensify them and make them, more powerful.
Very, I guess, suspicious that the storm is so strong and it's hitting a city with smart city plans.
All right, thanks, Tracy. So I just want to recap something real quick on our old video, is the fact that we saw some bunker ships actually sitting in the hurricane, and one of them was an autonomous bunker ship, which had changed its name about 3 times, the last time actually being about a week before this storm. So October 15th, it had its last name change. And I want to show just a quick little clip of the hurricane and where we saw this injected convection. I call this surface aerosol injection, and this is exactly where we saw the autonomous bunker ship sitting there ejecting plumes into the hurricane. All right, so that was the first suspicious sign of geoengineering, and we'll get into some more later. All right, so as far as what's currently happening, the hurricane has made landfall just west of Black River in a place called New Hope, ironically. And this is the 3rd strongest hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic. And it is the strongest hurricane to actually make landfall in the Atlantic at 892 millibars. And there has now been a wind gust that was recorded at 252 miles an hour, which is a full 40 miles an hour stronger than even Category 5 Hurricane Otis in Acapulco a couple years ago. So this is really almost unprecedented. We haven't seen anything like this in my lifetime. And so this is going to be catastrophic. And there are 3 million people in the path of this hurricane. All right, so now I do want to shift gears a little bit. Well, actually, I'm going to go through some of the geoengineering evidence that we've seen. So I just showed you the surface aerosol injection, but there's also been some evidence of stratospheric aerosol injection, also known as chemtrails. And I'm going to play this clip.
You guys hearing me? Do you understand that this is the 3rd or 4th hurricane in a row that the NOAA slider cuts our feed to view the hurricane the day before it hits land? No, this is not a server issue. If you look over here, there's no data past the 15th hour even to select. If I go back here to the 24th, it goes all the way, all full 24 hours of the day. There's a lot of those planes. So please take this hurricane seriously. To be completely honest with you guys, this hurricane does concern me. It has lots of trails and they keep taking away our ability to see it on satellite.
All right, so now we have seen evidence of both surface aerosol injection and stratospheric aerosol injection. And in the near future, I will keep a closer eye on the NOAA slider so that I can catch those chemtrails in action. All
Okay,
right.
just real quick, the bunker ships that are putting moisture in the air, that strengthens the hurricane because there's more moisture in the storm. And is that right?
Yeah, they're adding a bunch of moisture to the air and helping the convection. So when they add a lot of moisture and perhaps heat to the water and the air, it helps with the convection, the convective available potential energy of the storm.
And then the spraying that helps with the conductivity of the atmosphere or the air. Is that kind of
Well, that depends on what they're spraying. Aluminum would actually make it more conductive. However, I think what's probably going on in these hurricane situations could be more of like a silver iodide type of situation where they're trying to increase the precipitation of the storm. Okay. So it's hard to say what chemical is being sprayed. Typically over land, you see aluminum, but this time it could be silver iodide.
Okay.
All right. So now moving along from the geoengineering aspects of the storm, we want to get a little bit to motive, actually. So One thing that I found is that there are some plans for Jamaica, which the nickname is New Jamaica, but there is a specific smart city plan called New Kingston. So they're actually going digital and they're calling it New Kingston. And this is all part of the Vision 2030 Jamaica and the Sustainable Development Goals. So way back in 2015, Jamaica, along with almost 200 other countries, signed the UN's agenda for 2030, their Sustainable Development Goals. And it says the SDGs have been integrated into the implementation of Vision 2030 Jamaica, and it's advancing the achievement of the SDGs, leaving no one behind. And I guess you could translate leaving no one behind as to everyone will be taken along for the ride. All right, so now some of the details about New Kingston. Some of this funding is coming from grants from the US, and they're gonna leverage existing JPS smart street lighting infrastructure, and they're gonna use it as a control system. Now, JPS is developing its smart city vision for New Kingston while aligning with the priorities and interests of key stakeholders, whatever that means. All right, so then I did actually find a PDF on this New Kingston Smart City. They had a 10-year roadmap, which actually goes way back. This plan is supposed to be completed by 2030 to 2033. Now, some of this plan includes smart monitoring, which involves like not just smart meters for electricity, but also smart meters for your water meter as well. And they also have apps where citizens can like report on each other for littering and stuff like that, as well as continuous air quality monitoring, which will notify citizens of unhealthy emission levels. And their goal is to develop greenhouse gas emission inventory and monitoring, as well as, green energy too. So they have a whole green energy initiative for an entire smart grid. And they also want to go cashless. So the Jamaica Urban Transport Company has a cashless fare collection system, and it's part of this smart transportation management center, which involves automated enforcement, planning, and emergency management. And this is all revolving around these, what they call 5-minute zones. They have little compartmentalized areas that are supposed to be reachable within 5 minutes, either by walking, biking, or public transportation. Now, some of this involves parking and mobility, and they have something called equitable streets, which is very similar. It's basically the cookie cutter of the complete streets that we've seen. They're just calling it equitable streets. And they also have green corridors, just like the West Maui Greenway. But what really got me here was the retractable bollards for automatic traffic control. And that will actually come into play when they, let's see here. So the pollution monitoring is going to be based on cutting off certain parts of the city when they achieve too high of a pollution level. So they're actually going to use these retractable bollards during times of high pollution to be able to cut off the traffic. And they might have certain days where they'll be just like, sorry, no cars today, pollution is too high. All right, so now back to the cashless aspect of this and the GIS. So they're going to have complete geographical information system and GPS tracking on everything with location services. And they also have a universal payment gateway, which will be completely cashless. They're trying to get rid of cash altogether. And we all know that, once people go digital, then they'll be able to turn off your access to your currency. And it's all tied into a smart city application, which controls everything. Now, this smart tracking involves what they call the Jamaica Eye, which involves like all of the CCTV surveillance cameras that are tied into the Flock system, which are going to track more than just people's faces. They're going to be tracking license plates and identification and all sorts of things. They also have gunshot detection as well as drones, which are going to be released to track everything as well. So it looks like all of the aspects of a smart city digital prison are being put into place in Jamaica.
And then I wanted to point out there are a lot of similarities, with Jamaica, Lahaina, Acapulco. These are areas, sometimes they're islands, but also Tenerife in Spain. They're islands with high tourism, often very beautiful areas, and I think kind of like strategic. I don't know. I feel like they're in locations. They're kind of doing them all over. They're not doing them like all in one area. I don't know. It's just kind of what I've been noticing.
Yeah, I would say some of the areas that we've reported on, like in Alaska, there is a geopolitical strategic aspect to it. And that may also be the case with Jamaica. But just like we've seen in so many other smart cities, it is very tied in with tourism. And so usually what we see is when a certain location, a tourist destination, receives 80% compliance with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, then they get what's called like a 5-year plan. And that 5-year plan is basically the development plan to turn it into a smart city. So once they reach 80%, then that 5-year plan kicks in. And it turns out that a lot of places around the globe, their 5-year plan is now kicking in because this is the last 5 years before 2030.
And I'm sorry I couldn't play all of that. That content belongs to the Brush Chunky YouTube channel, but I played a little bit of it that I can comment on for fair use. And so, but I had to cut a little parts of it out and stuff like that. But they had Ariana Masters there explaining that the chemtrails, some of them are sprayed from planes. She was explaining how sometimes you can see the planes spraying the chemtrails, and other times she says they cut the satellite feed, and she was explaining how it cut off. So you didn't see the planes there in that examples that she was showing with Hurricane Melissa. And so they cut off the satellite feed, and then you can't see the plane spraying the chemicals. And then she says that the storm intensifies greatly, always whenever that happens. It increases when they cut the feed to the satellite, and then what happens is they spray the chemtrails, and then the storm intensifies greatly. Here's a look at some damage that was caused by Hurricane Melissa to Jamaica after they fueled this storm with chemicals, as Shane Buell just explained and demonstrated. He actually showed evidence of it using that software.
The town of Black River on Jamaica's southwest coast. This was where Hurricane Melissa unleashed its worst. Everywhere, evidence of the destructive power of 185-mile-an-hour winds. And on its ruined streets, 3 days on from the storm, growing desperation. Aid, which has been arriving in the capital, hasn't yet found its way here.
It hasn't come. No minister, nobody hasn't reached there. No supplies, no helicopter help, nothing.
We are hungry here now, so what we can get until they assist us, we will take it.
Tracy Ann rode out the storm at home, trapped upstairs as the ground floor flooded. Now she's back to see what remains of her cafe and clothes shop on the seafront.
It was just shocking to see everything inside. It's washed to the road. It's the tables, the dining tables, the furniture. It's crazy.
The town's hospital had part of its roof peeled off by the storm. It is still just functioning, staff having done their best to keep their patients safe.
We had to carry them to the top floor, which essentially caved in, so we had to move them back to the ground floor. In the accident and the emergency area, it started flooding, so we had to be there pushing out the water.
No way forward? Just getting to the areas worst hit is an effort in itself. More than 100 roads blocked. Communications hit hard. The fear that the death toll will rise further as authorities reach more cut-off areas. In Santa Cruz, inland from Black River, Sonia is doing what little she can to recover her livelihood, drying out storm-damaged stock from her shop. But the roof is missing, and she doesn't have the money to get it replaced.
I feel cast down, discouraged, like I would have just give it up. But I'm still doing what I can do. I don't know, I just trying. It's terrible, it's terrible. Everything gone.
People here are used to the ravages of hurricane season, but those hurricanes are now being fueled by a warming Caribbean Sea. As Jamaicans start to recover from the strongest storm in their country's history, the fear is they may not have to wait too long for one stronger still.
Next, the border chief is chased from a federal courthouse in Chicago. Check this out.
All right, good morning, everybody. JT Siskowski for Status Coup. I am here outside of the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago, where in just a few minutes, the Border Patrol Commander, Greg Bavino, who is in charge of the entirety of Operation Midway Blitz here in the Chicagoland area. That's the operation that is currently underway by this federal government using your taxpayer dollars to forcibly separate people from their families and their communities and deport thousands of people for no crime other than being in this country. He has to speak to Judge Sarah Ellis in this courtroom and answer some pretty serious questions about some clear violations that he has made to the judge's order, which restricts the use of tear gas and other kinds of force in communities here in the Chicagoland area. Since this judge issued a ruling putting a temporary hold on when and how members of the federal government can deploy tear gas here in the Chicagoland area, if anything, we've only seen the use of tear gas increase in that time. Originally, Greg Bavino was supposed to be here for a hearing on November 5th. That has now been moved up to today because the judge felt that it could not wait to get answers to some of her burning questions about why the federal government is doing this and how in any way is it not a violation of her orders. If she finds that it is a violation, then there are several avenues that she could pursue, not least of all being holding parts of the federal government, maybe Greg Bavino himself specifically, or other members of the Trump administration in contempt of court, with then the possibility for even more stringent requirements placed on the federal government. The plaintiffs in this case, the lawyers who brought this lawsuit against the federal government for their use of force, are right now asking the federal government, or excuse me, asking the federal judge to just put a blanket ban on the use of tear gas here in Chicago. Now, this is not just a Chicago issue, because as we have seen, Chicago has proven to be a bit of a testing ground for the Trump administration. Tactics that were first used here in some of their operations are now being exported across the country to other cities. So that is what we are looking for out of this, is how are our federal courts going to respond to some of these authoritarian tactics by the Trump administration? And are they going to meaningfully hamper the Trump administration in any way? Or is it going to be free reign for this authoritarian administration to continue a reign of terror, not just here in Chicago, but then across the country? And as evidence for how this is going to be perpetrated across the country, I want to direct your attention to some recent news reports that we have seen in the last couple of days. Many outlets now are reporting that the federal government, that the Trump administration has relieved ICE commanders of their duties in many cities across the country with the intention of replacing them with Border Patrol commanders, similar to how Greg Bavino, who is a Border Patrol commander, is in charge here in Chicago of the ICE operations here. Why is that relevant? Well, Border Patrol has much more of a, let's call it a cowboy attitude for how they approach things. Much more liberal, I guess, in the use of force. Liberal in the sense of much more willing to use it and using it kind of at the drop of a hat, not afraid of those tactics immediately escalating situations where there are protesters, immediately deploying force whenever there is even a modicum of opposition to what the administration is doing here in the Chicago area. So that is the beginning of that playbook of replicating what is happening here in Chicago in cities across the country. I'm going to bring up some of that reporting right now. John, while I do that, if you just kind of want to show the scene out here, this is what it looks like outside of the courthouse. We have just a whole bunch of media right now out here. Greg Bavino walked in just a short time ago before we went live, did appear in this court, or is appearing in this court. There was some question of if he was going to appear because the Department of Homeland Security was not answering some requests from the press, inquiring if he would actually bother to show up and answer the judge's questions. But he is reportedly here in this building, and he'll be in a courtroom in one of the upper floors of this courthouse. Yeah, that's Greg Bavino is coming out the door right now. That's him without the helmet on.
Shame on every single one of you! Bavino, fuck you, bitch! Shame on you! These motherfuckers are from the FBI agent! These motherfuckers are the same ones that were in fucking Roscoe and Square Street! Bavino! Shame on you! Child abducting piece of shit! Child kidnapping, Nazi scum! Fuck you! Get your microphone. Bambino, fuck you, bitch! Get the fuck out of my city, bitch! You are not welcome, bitch! You are not welcome! Get the fuck out of my city, bitch! Get the fuck out of my city, bitch! These are my streets! These are my streets! Get the fuck out of Chicago! Get the fuck out of my city, bitch! Child abduction, piece of shit! You can't drive, bitch! You can't drive! That's city property! And you crossed the line! Mr. Bavino! Chicago is watching, and you crossed the line. Mr. Bovino, Chicago is watching, and you crossed the line. Back it up. Back it up. Mr. Bovino, back it up. Chicago is watching. Back it up. And you crossed the line. Back it up. This is what the Nuremberg trials were for, Bovino. Fuck you. Fuck you, bitch! Fuck you up! Fuck you, bitch! You shit! Kill yourself!
Here's a look at the new Russian missile that's capable of reaching the United States.
Officials in Moscow say they have successfully tested its nuclear-powered Burevestnik cruise missile.
Товарищ Верховный командующий, такое испытание было проведено 21 октября. Действительно, отличие его от предыдущих испытаний, что был осуществлен многочасовой полет ракеты, и в ходе которого она преодолела расстояние 14 тысяч километров. И это не предел.
According to Russian President Vladimir Putin, the missile can evade any defense system. It reportedly flew 14,000 kilometers for about 15 hours when it was tested earlier in the week. In remarks released by the Kremlin on Sunday, Putin called the missile a, quote, unique weapon with near unlimited range and confirmed plans to move toward deployment. Moscow says the test shows its nuclear deterrent is at its highest level.
the system is intended to defeat a missile defense. And so the idea is because it can fly for basically an unlimited range, then it can fly around defenses.
Next, I'm going to show you guys Trump's idea of this golden dome. And I'll explain after that, I'll explain why this golden dome won't work against the new Russian missile. Here's the golden dome idea. Which, by the way, let me just point out before I even start this, the golden dome is still an idea. The new Russian cruise missile, they just perfected it. They've been working on it for a long time, and it's now actually perfected and ready to go.
Well, we don't have a huge amount of detail yet about how this Golden Dome will work. Israel's Iron Dome works by detecting incoming rockets using a ground-based radar system. It then fires interceptor missiles if they are heading for highly populated areas. Currently, the US defends its airspace by using systems such as the Patriot system, which is a surface-to-air system. The Patriot systems are based at military bases around the US, including in Oklahoma and Alaska. The Golden Dome system would likely use infrared space-based sensors to detect and track missiles and intercept them using advanced weapon systems. Its big advantage would be being able to detect them much earlier during their boost phase, something which ground-based systems can't do.
The new Russian Burevestnik can reach the United States, and it flies very, very low. Only around 200 feet or so off the ground. That's how it avoids radar. The Golden Dome uses SAM turrets. That's all it is it's SAM turrets with a radar system. SAM turrets are basically just surface-to-air missiles that intercept and blow up any incoming missiles. But the new Russian cruise missile flies so low that blowing it up is still going to have catastrophic effects. Because we're talking about a nuclear missile, a nuclear warhead. And so the entire area is still going to be destroyed because this thing flies so low to the ground. And it's so powerful. Detonating it at that altitude or elevation, it's just not going to matter. It's going to be too low and too powerful. You guys should like this. Check this out. So this is the National Monument here, which is not far from the White House. Trump team, nope, we're not on that yet. Trump wearing a diaper at the the National Monument, which is, like I was just mentioning, it's right near the White House. But I love the little toys that they have of the Trump wearing the diaper. So they didn't just have the giant balloon, which is like kind of like a blimp. They can fill that with air, or they can fill it with helium and make it float up in the sky. And they can parade it around during parades and stuff like that, marches. But you can see the National Monument there in the background of that Trump wearing a diaper. There's the toy. And children are going to see that. They're going to say, Mommy or Daddy, I want one of those. I actually think I might want to get one of those Trump toys wearing the diaper there. And it's kind of funny because you think that what he's going to do is he's got that new bunker he's building so he can go and hide. And after he cuts off the SNAP benefits, that's going to be a lot of people, 42 million angry people. He can go down in that bunker and put on a diaper. This is just ridiculous here, where the Trump team created an AI-generated video that to fuel the No Kings protests that took place on October 18th, and 7 million people showed up and protested, setting a new record. But you can see him dressed up there. You know, why are they doing that? I think that's going to backfire. Watch, I bet you that'll backfire on them. The Trump team creating that AI-generated video. They created that themselves. And then we're just showing it here. If you enjoyed this new show, this is a new alternative news show. A lot of people don't know about it yet. Please like, share, and recommend it so that it doesn't get canceled in 2026. If it doesn't start getting more views, it'll get canceled. It doesn't need a lot of views. It needs to get at least 50 views or so per episode to avoid being canceled next year. Last, an Al Green trick or treat. I'm not sure if this is going to be an Al Green trick or an Al Green treat. He says that they're close to making a decision that will end the government shutdown. Have a good night, everyone.
Friends, these are some difficult times. People are suffering. I see no reason why the president couldn't have stepped off of Air Force One, and upon stepping off of Air Force One, simply say, look, let's negotiate. Let's get this done. But he didn't. He said, we won't negotiate until the shutdown is over. And he said that we should now move and play the Trump card, which is the elimination of the filibuster, so that he can do now what he could have done on day one. By the way, all of these people who have been terminated, people who have been laid off, the president at some point plans to fill these positions again, but they will be with people who are loyal to him above and beyond the Constitution. He now has an opportunity to fill literally tens of thousands of positions with loyalists. There is much more going on than meets the eye here, and we should wake up, open our eyes, and see what's happening to our country by way of what the president and his Republican colleagues, my colleagues, Republican colleagues, are doing to prevent us from negotiating so that they can move forward with this whole notion of eliminating the filibuster and passing what they consider a clean CR. I welcome your questions.
In layman's word, what does eliminating the filibuster mean to the mom, the single mother that's on her couch right now watching this? What does that mean to her?
Okay. Yes.
In real words.
For those who may not have heard the question, the gentleman's question was, in layman's terms, what does eliminating the filibuster mean for the mom who is having some concerns with SNAP, or persons who are having concerns with making ends meet? Well, here's what it means. It means that on day one, they could have done this. And on day one, they could have prevented the shutdown. So they will now prevent the shutdown with a tool that they could have used on day one. I think it's important for me to explain how the filibuster works, and then people can see how simple it is, because it seems that many people are of the opinion that this is something that requires an inordinate amount of effort to get done. Here's what they could have done on day one, since they're now ready to do it, the president and some of his followers. Here's how they could have done it on day one. They but only had to bring the piece of legislation before the Senate. And when the legislation is before the Senate, some senator says to the presiding officer, I move that this legislation be passed with a simple majority. And the presiding officer would say, no, you have to have 60 votes. That person who moved for the simple majority would then simply say, I appeal the ruling of the presiding officer or the chair. I appeal the ruling of the presiding officer. When the person does this, if you are the party to prevail, then we move forward in the direction that you have proclaimed. So if the presiding officer prevails, you stay with 60 votes. But if the person who said, no, let's do it with a majority, meaning 51 or more votes, if that person prevails, then you literally would move forward with 51 or more votes. And to do this, you only have to have 51 votes. So if 51 votes prevail, 51 people vote to move forward with that piece of legislation, then it would move forward without having to have 60 votes, which is what we have to have now. 60 has become the magic number to get things done in the Senate, it seems. You would eliminate that 60 vote rule. People would never have suffered all of the indignation and humiliation that they're having to contend with now. People could have gone to work, received their paychecks timely. All of this would be avoided if they had done that on day one, which they knew they could do on day one, but they decided to wait until the crisis was in full blossom so that they could blame Democrats and say, well, Democrats are the reason we're having to do this now, when they could have done it on day one. Now, to validate what I'm saying, when the Supreme Court had a vacancy and the Republicans wanted to put Gorsuch, Justice Gorsuch, on the Supreme Court, Justice Gorsuch couldn't get the 60 votes. What did they do? They made the motion that I just called to your attention, that a majority prevail, a simple majority, and avoid this cloture with 60 votes. And lo and behold, Gorsuch was placed on the Supreme Court with less than 60 votes. I believe the vote count was 54 to 45. He was placed on the Supreme Court with less than 50 votes. And that's because that was important to them. It was important. If the welfare of the American people was important as putting Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, they would have done this on day one. But it's not. The welfare of the American people is not that important. It's getting the power to do what they want to do. They know that once they eliminate the filibuster, as the president wants to do it, then they can rush through all kinds of things that they want to do. But this was a clever way to get to this point where they can do it and blame Democrats. Well, Democrats are not to blame, should not be blamed, because Democrats have consistently said, let's negotiate. Let's negotiate. But rather than negotiate, they would want to dictate. They would want to give us a take it or leave it opportunity. And that's not the way you protect the health care of the American people. We've got to do this. Health care is the means by which people get to do all of the other things in life. So we have to protect health care.